Have you ever played one of those interactive storytelling games online? The kind where you make a choice and then the game responds in a different way depending on the choice you made. Or maybe you remember one of those really old choose your own adventure books where you flip to different pages depending on your decisions. Well, college can be a lot like those interactive stories. I mean, you start a class and then it just doesn't go the way you expected. And suddenly you're staring down a decision. Do I keep going? Or do I turn to a different page? Do I withdraw from the course? So, tonight we're pulling back the curtain on the rest of that story. What really happens when you make that decision to draw, and what happens after you withdraw? Is it the end? Or is it just a plot twist and maybe a new path ahead? So I'm Loy from GCC's online learning team, and this is episode 7, Post-Withdrawal. We have a great storyteller with us tonight. So Patricia Rolland is here from the Student Success Center, and I'll let her share a little bit about herself, and then we'll jump into the options that students have after withdrawing from a class. So welcome, Patricia.
Thank you for having me on your podcast. My name is Patricia Rolland, and I am one of the student success coaches at the Batavia campus. Part of my job is helping students with things like selecting and registering for classes or changing a major. Another part of my job is to help students navigate the college experience. For example, directing them to the department that's going to be able to serve them the best, or talking with a student to help them decide whether or not to withdraw from a class.
All right, well, thank you. So we've kind of set the stage a little bit for what you do. Let's turn to the first page in our story. A student is having a problem with a course and they're really struggling. So first off, how do they weigh whether it's better to stick it out or step away? I mean, that feels like one of the toughest decisions.
It really is one of the toughest decisions. And this is something that you will want to discuss with your advisor and with people in your life, your family, your friends, maybe classmates. There are a lot of reasons that a student may want to withdraw from a course. So, for example, they may have started a course and not really realized how much work the course was. Or maybe family obligations have changed, maybe their health has changed. Maybe it doesn't have to be dramatic either. They could have just realized that they absolutely are not interested in that elective that they took, right? Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of reasons. And sometimes people get a little bit behind, and now it's going to be difficult or maybe even impossible to avoid failing. There are a lot of things to consider. We're going to be talking about a lot of things. How does it work academically? How does it work financial aid-wise? Mm-hmm. You're really going to want to come in, talk with your advisor, and really kind of go through each part of this. What are the impacts going to be? And I think the most important thing is, what is going to be the best decision for you? Because everybody's different. We're all real people with real lives. And so it's a very individual decision.
Right. Very much so. Right, so you said we're going to talk about some of the impacts that it has when you decide to withdraw from a class. So let's start with just straight up the academic impacts. Okay, so now you're thinking about that decision. And what happens right after you make a choice? You withdraw from a class, what does that look like on the record? Is it a failing grade? Is it something else?
So it is not a failing grade. It's going to show up on your transcript. And if you've looked at your transcript, you'll notice that your transcript is organized by semester. So each semester is going to list the classes that you've taken, your grade, and the amount of credit hours. So if you withdraw from the course, it will be on the transcript. And instead of a grade like, an A or a B or an F, it's going to have a W there.
Okay. And so what happens then with a student's GPA? So you withdraw, you've got a W on that transcript. What does that do to their GPA?
So this is the nice thing about the withdrawals, is that it does nothing to your GPA. It does not drag it down. It's just not going to factor into your GPA in any way, positive or negative.
Oh, that's nice. So, and thinking about this one, so I used to tutor in the math lab. We had a lot of students who would take a math class and for whatever reason, you listed a whole bunch of reasons why it might not go well the first time. And so it didn't go well the first time, and they were always asking, can I retake it again later? Like, if I choose to withdraw, can I do that same class again? And then does that make my withdrawal go away?
That is an excellent question. So first of all, yes, you can retake the class. In some cases, you may need to retake the class if it is a class that you need to graduate. The withdrawal, the W on your transcript, isn't going to go away. What's going to happen is you'll see it listed in that first semester when you took it and you withdrew, and it's going to have the W. But then in the later semester, when you retake the class, it's going to list that class again, and it's going to show whatever grade that you earned.
Okay. All right. So here's our big story question, though. Does withdrawing set you back on track for graduation? Are there ways to adjust so that you can still graduate when you originally planned to graduate?
That is an excellent question. And this is one of the reasons that you really want to talk to your advisor first. Sometimes, absolutely, you can get right back on track. It may mean taking an extra class that next semester, or maybe taking a summer class. I know we have winterm coming up. Those are options as well. And sometimes it's that simple. It's just a matter of taking that class at a later time. Other times it may mean adjusting your timeline for graduation. So this could happen, for example, if the class is a prerequisite for other classes that you need. Mm-hmm. And the other thing to keep in mind is kind of the keeping in mind the course load going further. What you don't want to do is overload the next semester, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And then you feel overwhelmed and you might need to withdraw from some of those classes. And you don't want to get into that, perpetual cycle of being overwhelmed and withdrawing. And the good news, though, is that doesn't have to happen. That's one of those things where you want to talk with your advisor. And again, it's what's best for you going forward.
Right. No, that makes sense. So, all right, so there's the academic questions. Let's talk a little bit about money, because that's always the big question. So, beyond grades, GPA, graduation, every good adventurer has to manage their resources for the journey. In college, that often means your financial aid. So withdrawing from a class can change how those resources play out. And when a student withdraws, all right, first question, withdrew from the class, I'm not taking the class anymore, do I still have to pay for it?
Yes, you do. So when it comes to paying for the class, there is that, the first few weeks where you could add and drop. And during those times, sometimes there's a refund, a partial refund. Mm-hmm. But when you get to the end of that time period, when instead of dropping a class, you're withdrawing from a class, at that point, you're responsible for 100% of the course. I would say think of it as you have reserved your seat. Mm-hmm. in the class up until the time when nobody else can take that seat.
Right. I was actually thinking, I know it's not the same, but I was actually thinking like gym membership. Even if you don't go, you still have to pay for it.
Yeah, that's the way it is. They give you that little window to opt out, and then you're done.
And then you're done. All right. Fair enough. All right. So we're a community college, and we have a lot of students using financial aid and scholarships sometimes. So how does a withdrawal affect their financial aid and their scholarships? Like, could they lose that money?
Yes, and that's a very important thing to be aware of. So, just one withdrawal here or there is not going to put you in danger of losing your financial aid. I actually brought along with me the chart that Pell has. Mm-hmm. And so to keep your financial aid, both for TAP and for Pell, you have to maintain a certain GPA, mm-hmm. and you also have to maintain a certain ratio between the number of credit hours that you attempted and the number of credit hours that you successfully completed. Mm. And so you don't want to let the withdrawals add up, because a withdrawal, just like a failing course, that factors into you attempted it, but you didn't successfully complete it. So if I give an example, if you take 12 credit hours, and this is cumulative, so you take 12 credit hours, mm-hmm. the federal government is expecting you to have completed successfully 8.
Oh.
So if you withdrew from one course and it was a 3-credit course, so the 12 minus the 3, you have 9 credits that you successfully completed and you're fine. So this is something to be aware of, especially like long term. And I'm not sure if all students know that TAP will look at this every single semester. The Pell will look at this every May.
Oh, okay. Okay. That's interesting. All right, so let's talk about full-time, part-time. So if a student drops a class, and what happens, can it change their status from full-time to part-time? Is it like it's not there anymore? And then what does that mean for things like, housing and status and so on?
Yeah, that's a big consideration. So for student athletes and for students who are residents of College Village, you have to maintain full-time status. Mm-hmm. Okay, so one of the things sometimes that works, we do have a limited number of 7-week courses that begin the 20th of October. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes a student can pick up one of those courses and then maintain their full-time status. I will say that's not going to work for everybody. It depends on whether a course you need is being offered. Mm-hmm. And also those courses go pretty fast. So making sure that it's the right fit for the student. I always advise them, if it's further into the semester, to speak with College Village to see if there will be any ramifications if that becomes the case.
Right. So those late start classes that you mentioned, they start October 20th.
They start October 20th.
For the semester, yeah. Mm-hmm. So, and those can only run 7 weeks. Mm-hmm. So they run fast. Are they smaller size classes, or are they twice the load?
So you're going to be doing the same thing that you would if it were 15 weeks. Mm-hmm. It's more condensed. So this is one of those things where that can be a good thing or it can be a bad thing. If it's something that you're pretty confident in, if it's not a question of just being overloaded with the overall amount of work for your whole semester, this is a great option, right? Take something quickly, get it out of the way. Mm-hmm. But it is something that you want to think about and make sure that it's a good fit. Mm-hmm. Because the last thing you want to do is withdraw from a course because you're overwhelmed and then take something that goes twice as fast.
Out of the frying pan and into the fire.
Exactly.
All right. So our last financial question here: if a student is worried about the financial impact, like who should they talk to first? Who's their first point of contact?
I would say the very first person to talk with is going to be your advisor. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to financial aid and with scholarships, there are lots of little rules. So for example, it's different between withdrawing from one class or withdrawing from all classes. Mm-hmm. It's also it also is different with the timeline, how much of the semester you attended. So if you've attended at least 60%, your financial aid is still going to pay for the class even though it's a W. Mm-hmm. So I would say go to your advisor first, because a lot of times we know the answers. And if it's a little fuzzy, like the timing is a little fuzzy, don't be surprised if we recommend that you go speak with financial aid directly, because they can give you a definitive answer.
Right.
For scholarships, especially outside, I would make sure you know the terms of the scholarship. That's not something that we always know.
Yeah, one of the things when students come to me and they ask financial aid questions, the first thing I say is, I don't know financial aid.
Yeah.
I'm going to send you over to your advisor, who may end up sending you to the financial aid office, but nobody wants to give you a wrong answer. Exactly. When it comes to your financial aid, right?
Exactly, and we're really lucky at GCC. Our financial aid department, each person specializes in a different aspect. So if I can direct you to the right person, that person is going to give you a fantastic answer, exactly for you. You as the student, your course load, your financial aid eligibility.
That's really interesting. I did not know that, and it's good to know.
It is.
Okay. So let's talk about our next steps then. So let's say a student makes a choice okay, I'm going to withdraw from this class. There's stuff going on in my life, or I needed to know something that I didn't realize before I got in here, or I really just don't care about this class. I don't like this class. I want a different class. But that doesn't mean that their whole story stops, right? It just means they need to chart a new course. And sometimes that's where things get a little confusing. So let's talk about the dates and deadlines piece. These students don't always know how late in the semester they can actually withdraw, or what that process actually looks like. So do they fill out a form? Do they need a professor's signature? Like, how does that happen?
So they do not need a professor's signature. The way that they can withdraw from a course, if they go into my dashboard and then they go into the registration view schedule and add or drop classes, just like they did when they registered for the classes to begin with. What they'll see is in the bottom right-hand corner, they'll see the summary box, and that's going to list all of the courses that they're taking that semester. And next to each class, there's going to be a drop-down box, and if they open that up and they select Web Withdrawal Post-Census and then click on Submit, then it will withdraw you from the course.
Okay. It's funny because you're describing where to go, and about halfway through where you're describing, I realize that I get to that same place from a completely different way.
Oh, do you really?
Yes, I go in through the website through, what do they call it, academic options and course search or something along those lines.
Oh, okay.
Right, and then you go into add drop classes and it takes you to the same place. I don't actually go through my dashboard, but it's good to know you can get there both ways.
Absolutely.
Right, okay. So, and then let's talk about some students, we've talked about you might want to take one of those late starts. How can they choose a late start class? Like, who can help them with that? And how late can you do that?
So you can do that a couple of days. I believe it's October 22nd is the last day to add without the signature of the faculty member. So you can find it on your own if you go to the course catalog, if you browse the classes, and then put in on the search, put in part of term, the 7 weeks, last 7 weeks, and it will show you what's open, what's not. Easier way to do that is to make an appointment, just come on in and, we'll open it up and you're going to probably toggle back and forth between your degree audit and what courses are available.
Right. That's always the scheduling, jigsaw puzzle that you're trying to fill in there. Right?
Exactly.
What's available and what I need. And I think, too, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's part of the reason that we have 12-week classes, isn't it?
It is, yes.
So those start, 3 weeks?
I believe they're 3 weeks in. Yeah,
weeks
I
in?
think this semester it was the 15th of September.
That sounds right.
Yep.
So you get into a class and right away you're like, yeah, okay, this is not what I thought it was. This is not the class for me. If you can make that decision up front, you can get a 12-week class, which is not going to run nearly as fast.
Correct.
Oh.
Yeah,
So
it's going to be a little bit faster, but most classes you're not gonna feel much of a difference between the 15 and the 12. It's when you get into the 7 weeks that it goes a bit faster.
Right. But good to know that there's options.
There are.
Okay, so we have some options. So let's talk about recovery. Okay, so our intrepid adventure, we don't want them to go it alone. Your good games, you have an ally, right?
Absolutely.
You choose your own adventure. We have our allies, people you can turn to for guidance and support and sometimes just encouragement, because in the face of a withdrawal, it can be hard to keep going. It can feel like a setback. But it doesn't have to be something you face on your own. So there's a whole mindset to this, and I'm going to go off chart a little bit here, but when I was getting my 4-year degree in computer science, I actually absolutely flamed out my final semester my senior year. I failed 3 of my 4 classes, and I did not do terribly well in the last one either. I probably should have withdrawn because I had just things going on in my life and ended up having to go back. It was so hard to go back because I felt like, I couldn't do that. And in the midst of everything that was going on, I thought it was somehow my fault. And not thinking about all the things that were happening in my life at the time. I was, I was moving, things were happening with my family, and, just different things. Didn't take that into account. So let's talk about, support systems that students can lean on, because I really wish that I had done that. Lean on some of the support systems. It wouldn't have taken me 10 years to come back and finish that degree, finish the 6 credits I needed to get that degree. So when students withdraw, the first thought that they might have is, I'm not cut out for college. I can't do that. Like, that feeling will sneak in for everybody, even your straight A students who are just having a bad time. When withdrawing might actually be the smartest move. So what do we have for those students to help them?
Yeah, mindset is a big deal, right? And those little thoughts come after us often, right? That, think about all that you're doing in life, and just because you weren't successful that one moment, right? That doesn't speak to you as a person, right? So I would say, first of all, it does not mean that you're not cut out for college. Absolutely. It also does not mean that you are not motivated. It doesn't mean that you're not smart. It doesn't mean any of those things whatsoever. Sometimes I like to think of it more as like a pause. Let's stop for a moment. Let's look at what went wrong. What do you need to be successful? And then let's come up with a plan. And that's where those conversations are so important, because we're all different, right? Our needs are different. For someone, that may mean I need to step away from for a little while and come back to it. Somebody else, it may mean, I need to take fewer courses because I'm also a spouse and a mother and I'm working. And so maybe we need to think about, graduating a year further down the road, but not being driven crazy and overwhelmed while we're doing it, right? I tell students all the time who are parents that, when they start, worrying that they're not putting as much into their courses as they should, I'm like, let's be realistic, though. If you're really wondering, should you give your child attention or the class? Right? So sometimes it's, the priorities change momentarily, and that doesn't mean that you can't complete the degree. It just means that we need to figure out, what do you need so that you're able to do it successfully, but you're also happy doing it. I'll use an example for myself. I didn't withdraw. I wish I had. There was a year in graduate school where I was going full-time, and I was working 2 full-time jobs. Now, I did get through it. I didn't withdraw. I don't think I realized that I had the option, honestly. But, I got through it, and I got A's and B's. Yay. I graduated on time. I was exhausted. I was miserable. And I don't remember any of the stuff I learned. So, looking back on it, if I had taken the advice that I'm giving now and said, wait, hold on, pause. What do I need right now so that I can get through this and I can make the most of it, and I can not be absolutely miserable, then that would have been the smarter way to go. Right.
And certainly the happier way to go.
Absolutely. And you're allowed to be a real person, right? I mean, we talk about how important it is to be a good student, and it is. And you have to be, a good employee, and that's true. But you're also allowed to be a real human. So we want to make that possible for you and still be wildly successful.
Right. Nice. So much guidance that I wish I had heard earlier. So I'm glad we're getting it on the air. So let's talk about who students can turn to on campus. So, having the right guide, just the conversations that we're having here, it can make all the difference trying to figure out the next step. So should they be talking to the professor? Should they be talking to the advisor? Should they be talking to somebody else?
All of the above. I would say, professor is a great place to start because they know their course better than anybody else on campus. So they can talk with you about, first of all, are you doing as poorly as you think? Right? And also, is this the time in the semester when students start feeling the pressure? Maybe it's, weeks 4 through 6 are difficult because of a particular project. You know what to expect. Is there something that they can suggest that would help you with your work? And also, you also want to know from the professor if things aren't going well. If the professor is saying, you know what, you're probably not going to pass, because that's going to be good information when it comes to you making the wisest decision for yourself.
Right.
Classmates are fantastic. Let's be honest. Sometimes you just need to whine about the thing that's really awful, right? And have somebody commiserate just a little bit.
I hate this class.
Right? We've all done it. But they're also unique because they're going through it at the same time that you are.
Right.
And they may have found something that really works for them, or they may also have the same problem and maybe you seek out a solution together.
Right. And we were having a conversation before we started the live about a class that's going on campus right now where, we've got some students who are feeling like they aren't doing very well. And the reality is they're doing very well. They're just not confident.
Right.
They're not confident in what they're doing. And so they feel like, oh, I'm not doing it well. Well, yes, you are.
Exactly.
So a conversation with the professor would just takes care of that right away.
Absolutely. Yeah, you find out that you're actually doing fine. You don't have to be worried about this. And professors want to have that conversation,
Yeah. And just point of note, if your professor says you're doing fine, you are doing fine.
Absolutely.
Trust them, okay? They're the ones grading. All right. So let's talk about a support beyond just your basic academics. So, you drop a class, it might feel isolating. It might feel like you're the only one struggling, but that's usually not the case. What resources on campus can students tap into so that they don't feel like they're going through it alone?
I'm glad you asked that because we have a great resource, and that is the Counseling and Wellness Services. And you can go right online. You can email them just at counseling@genesee.edu. So that is, and they work with all enrolled students. So that is a service that is built for you. And also, I would say try not to isolate yourself. I think, sometimes when we isolate ourselves, whatever the problem is just seems so much bigger than it would otherwise. So I would say, don't isolate yourself. Use the resources. We also, if you're thinking of sticking it out, we have a great learning center. We have some really great tutors who are there to help you. Talk with your advisor. If you're not sure where to go, that's a great first place to start.
Right.
And talk to the people who love you. Talk to your family, your spouse, your friends. Nobody gets through this life completely alone.
Right. We all have people we rely on. We had Megan from the Wellness Center was on, I think it was week 2 on our podcast, talking about so many services they have available in the Wellness Center, and I didn't even know everything that she's got down there, and that's really awesome that you can take advantage of those things. They're all taken care of by the college, so there's no out-of-pocket costs.
That's a great resource.
I'm glad you mentioned the Wellness Center because that's a great resource for our students.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Absolutely. And I would say reach out as soon as you think that there's a problem.
Right.
Because it's usually much easier to correct at the beginning. And we're not here to judge you. You come in with a problem and the course isn't going well. I don't care if you tell me, hey, it was all my fault, didn't do the homework, now I'm going to fail. Okay, that's fine. Where are we now? What's the best course of action? How do we go forward?
Right. And that's a great way to look at it, right?
Absolutely.
The past is in the past. All right. How do we right the ship?
Absolutely. And nobody's expecting perfection. None of us are perfect. It's just a matter of, okay, let's pause and figure out where we're going from here, to make the best future you can.
Oh, and you've led us right into our closing here, which is awesome because I know you haven't heard this, but you will hear it now. So anyway, that brings us to the end of episode 7, post-withdrawal. And with Patricia's help, we're looking at choosing your own college adventure can mean so many different things for different students, and that's okay. It's okay to have a different adventure from everybody else in your class. So our one step for this week is, if you're struggling in a class, don't keep it to yourself. Reach out to a support person. It might be your professor, your advisor, the Student Success Center, the Wellness Center, a classmate that you trust. Reach out to us here in Online Learning if you're having difficulty with an online class. And just remember, the conversation doesn't end here, okay? If you're watching on YouTube, you can leave a like or drop a comment about what stood out to you in this episode. And if you've got more questions, you can jump in the Community Hub. If you've heard me talk about this before, it's in Brightspace in the Success course for GCC students under Activities and then Discussions. And there's a place there where you can keep asking questions and connecting with people here on campus. So if you're a GCC student, we've gone over our time a little bit, which is okay because we had a great topic this week and a great guest this week. But we do have the Zoom after party, and I'll be in there in Zoom to answer questions one-on-one, and that link is in Brightspace. So again, I'm Lloyd from the Online Learning team. Thank you, Patricia, for joining us, and thanks for listening to Study With Me. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss next week's episode. And here's the part that is new for you, maybe. But our mantra on our podcast here is progress, not perfection.
Ooh, I like that.
Yes. Pretty is, what is it? Perfect is pretty, but done is beautiful.
I like that too. Very nice.